Victorious was born during an interesting period of Schneider's bakery. In 2010, the bakery was more commercially popular than it had ever been, coming off the back of iCarly's successful third season. For a lot of people, however, this was retrospectively the period when the output of the bakery started to become not as good as it once was. I'm quite interested in this era of the bakery for that reason, as the ratings were surging, but the quality seemed to be dropping. But when exactly did that quality drop happen? I'm honestly not sure. Somewhere between Victorious starting and Victorious ending. That is not to say that I think Victorious is a bad show. On contraire, I actually think it has some pretty good episodes. I do think that running iCarly and Victorious alongside each other took its toll on Dandy Dan and the Dough Punchers. Certainly those later episodes of iCarly were significantly worse than the early ones. We were subjected to the forced Sam and Freddie pairing, and a lot more shipping in general, something which that show had made fun of in an earlier episode. Relationships had never been something that Schneider's shows had focused on very heavily in the past. Zoe 101 is the exception to this, but then that show is the black sheep of the bakery, considering the lack of a laugh track. The point remains, if I dare to keep this bakery analogy going, double-layered cakes didn't fly out of the Schneider ovens until later in iCarly's run, and occurred for the entirety of Victorious's run. I suspect Schneider and co realised how popular shipping was becoming in the internet age, with fan fiction, fan edits, and abundance of GIFs on Tumblr becoming more and more frequent, so they decided to incorporate these aspects more into their shows to drive up ratings. And it worked. In order to figure out how successful this was from a storytelling standpoint, whether this is what caused Schneider's cakes to go sour. Okay, this analogy has gone too far. I'm going to analyse one pair often talked about in the Victorious community, Cat and Robbie. I'll be figuring out whether the perpetual teasing of them being together actually drove the story of Victorious forward in any worthwhile way. I'll essentially look at each episode which focuses on their relationship in some significant way, and no, standing close to each other does not count. First though, I'll just set the scene. Chances are if you're watching this video then you have at least watched some of Victorious, but if you haven't then I'll fill you in. Tori Vega joins Hollywood Arts, a performing arts school that teaches you how to act and sing, but teaches you no conventional subjects. Want to learn how to solve second order non-linear differential equations while perfecting your tap dancing on the side? Tough, look elsewhere. At the school already you have Jade, the mean girl, Beck, her boyfriend, Robbie, a nerd who carries a puppet around with him all the time, Audrey, a talented guy who gets a record deal in one episode only for it to never be brought up again, and Kat, a ditzy redhead with violent mood swings. Though she gradually becomes dumber and dumber as the show goes on, because apparently that's funny. Oh yeah, Tori's sister Trina also goes to the school. She's a mostly superfluous character used for jokes occasionally, or if they needed a character to be annoying. The kids go through wacky shenanigans related to their school and trying to become part of the Hollywood machine. It's a show that, past its first few episodes, sometimes decides not to have a moral at the end, instead attempting to subvert that trope, and occasionally skipping the characters being punished for something that they would be punished for in another children's show. For example, they break into a store and see no repercussions for it. One thing that does have repercussions though is the relationship between Beck and Jade, which is the closest thing this show has to a running narrative. Relationships are usually on the writer's mind, which is why Cat and Robbie were also paired together. They hang out in some earlier episodes, just like all the characters as their roles are being established. Cat kisses Robbie to show that girls can fake passion in this episode stage frighting, which is mildly interesting since I suppose you could, and I'm sure people have, argue that she wasn't faking, but the evidence for that in the episode is thin. The nerd getting the pretty girl is a path well travelled in sitcoms, and kids shows in general. Indeed, if I were writing the show, I might have considered planting seeds between the two of them. Cat ranges from a little detached to completely detached from reality. Robbie is slightly more down to earth, but still out there, so I can see how sparks may fly between the two if they were to grow closer and bond over time through shared experiences. I think having these two slightly strange characters accepting each other's idiosyncrasies could have been a good thing. I guess I'll briefly talk about the fourth episode, the Birthweek Song, since Cat and Robbie have a subplot together. The main plot is about how the Vegas inexplicably indulge Trina's selfish demand for her birthday be extended to become a birth week. It's a fine plot, I suppose, though no one really ends up learning anything, and the revolution isn't that funny. In these early episodes, Trina's parents appear to spoil her relentlessly, but then in later episodes they openly despise her, which is sort of a funny progression, I suppose. Cat goes with Robbie to help him fix his grandma's computer. Incidentally, his grandma's played by Renee Taylor, who wrote Lovers and Other Strangers, which was nominated for an Oscar. Predictably, she doesn't know how to use a computer, is hard of hearing, and is generally rude. I've spoken about how tired jokes like these can be before, and it's no better here. Otherwise, she just keeps thinking Robbie and Cat are dating and insists that Robbie can do better, which I guess is funny because it's not true. I had the misfortune of catching an episode of Sam and Cat on TV the other day, so it was strange comparing how Cat acts in that show compared to how she does in the Birthweek Song. It's not Ariana's fault, I don't think, I'm sure it was the directing, but to early, Cat is a more layered character and has a voice which doesn't make my ears ring. The resolution to the plot is fine, nothing special, which pretty much sums up my opinion on this episode as a whole. Boring, but tolerable. I don't think this episode really suggests Cat and Robbie as a couple too much. It seems more like the writers are just pairing different characters together in each episode, trying to get a feel for which characters play off each other well, and Cat and Robbie play pretty well together in this episode, comedically at least. One thing I can appreciate in a double act is when the two can alternate between playing the straight man or woman and playing the funny man. Contrast this to Tori, who plays the entire episode straight, while Trina delivers all the gags. So ultimately, I would say that from this episode, Cat and Robbie have potential, but nothing more than that. Next time I'll get on to the meat and potatoes of this relationship, as I continue to find out whether they work together, as well as determining what's happened to this once stellar bakery. Thanks for watching. Since this is just the prologue, I'll have 2 more parts coming where I look at the episodes which focus on Cat and Robbie's relationship more heavily. I do have a list of these episodes, but feel free to suggest them so that I don't miss any. And I'll look at these episodes more thoroughly than I did the Birthweek Song, just because there's more going on, more to talk about. And anyway, if you enjoyed the video, subscribe so you don't miss part 2, and I'll hopefully see you there. Thanks.